Hi, welcome to today's review. Today I want to take a look at one of the newer Bachmann coaches. This is one of their so-called Aircon DCC controlled coaches, and it's part of a range of coaches that Bachmann have introduced in 2019, which include a DCC controller chip on board and to control the onboard lighting. So this is, I think it's probably the first time I've seen this from a vendor where they've added this capability of DCC control to the lighting capability, and normally the lighting is just a default on. So I really wanted to take a look at this. I was curious for a few reasons. I do like to have lighting in my coaches, and I do have a rake of blue and grey Mark II coaches from Hornby actually, and one of the missing coaches in that was actually a restaurant car. And so that was one of the reasons I did pick this particular model. So we're going to be taking a look at the 39-685DC, DC for the DCC control. And it is a Mark II, as I say. It's the restaurant coach, and in the blue and grey livery. So as part of this review, I'm actually going to do a comparison and a kind of a matching with the Hornby rake. And I'll do a running session with that as well, so that you can see the two of them in action. So I think the first thing to do really here is to get a look at this coach. We'll take some close-up photographs as well so you can get to see the detail on it. We'll do a running session then, and then I'll kind of do an overall summary of what my thoughts are. These coaches aren't cheap, so I suppose there's a question here whether they are value for money, whether there's something that you might want in your layout, because it is a bit of an investment, particularly if you're going to put a rake of these together, which I don't have an intention of doing right now. I'm going to be mixing them, as I say, with some existing coach stock that I have, and I suppose that should be interesting for people who might want to do the same. Okay, so I think the next thing we're going to do here is I'm going to pause the video for a minute, get this guy out of the box, and we'll start taking a closer look. Okay, talk to you in a minute. Okay, we've got the coach out of the box. It's in the standard packaging for any coaching stock that you'd get from Bachmann. It does come with a leaflet, which you wouldn't normally get with a coach, and I suppose this leaflet is covering a number of things. It covers the actual fitting of the detailing kit, so there's a fairly substantial detailing kit here, and that is quite important in terms of the tail light option if you're going to use the tail light on this. So it shows the fitting of all of those, fitting of the close coupling, which is an option that comes with the standard coupling hooks on board. So that's the first sheet. The second sheet is about the DCC capabilities. So it's kind of similar. It's on the similar type of paper you'd get with the DCC locomotive from Bachmann. So it's got the function list here. So turning the tail light, which I was mentioning there, on and off. The flashing option that you can have for the tail light. Now, obviously, if you're using this in the middle of a rake, you wouldn't be using the tail light capability. It's got the options then for the interior lights, and you can kind of turn on different segments of the carriage. So it's got the guards compartment, but that's obviously only applicable to the BSO coach. The interior lights, the passenger seating area, you can see those there. And then the door interlock lights, and again, it'll be interesting to see those. And you control those on either side of the coach. So it defines a side A and a side B of the coach, and you can kind of make that reference to the kind of the fitting on the roof there, and you can actually align the coach, so it actually gives it to you down here in terms of what's the front of the coach, etc., and then you can pick your side A and side B accordingly. So talks about the tail lamps and the options you have there, this battery lamp and the oil lamp. Obviously the more modern versions of these coaches would use the battery version, so that's what you would use if you're representing a more modern era. And so this just shows you how you can collecting them together and actually getting the sides correct. And I mean, typically on a rake like this, you would actually configure the same DCC address across all the coaches in a given rake. So when you turn on the lights or control the lights, they'll all come on together, and that would normally be the way you do it. So I haven't put this out yet. I haven't actually run this yet. So we'll see what this looks like a little bit later on in terms of how it functions. And we can kind of see in the summary how it worked out. So let's get to look at the coach itself. So it's in the blue and grey livery, and it's I suppose, given its price range, you would expect it to be a kind of a higher spec than the norm. So they call it the Aircon type coaches, and that's because these would have air conditioning fitted in them, and you'll see that distinctive detail on the bottom there. So you can see the little DCC on there, and there's a little option switch which is explained in the instructions for the tail light. You can see power pickup actually is coming off both bogies, so that should ensure a good operation. You can see the spring-loaded actual interlock here for your couplers. It's not actually connected to the bogie itself, it's separate, it's spring-loaded underneath, and different coaches starting to use this now. So it is a good level of detail, I would say, and there are additional detailing parts that can be added. And as I mentioned, this is a buffet car. They're not that common for the Mark II stock. The Hornbys wouldn't have had a Mark II buffet car for quite a while, so this is one of the reasons I picked it up. It completes the rake for me. And the Hornby coaches I'll be running with this do have lighting as well, so they've got the standard lighting, so that'll be on all the time. And the first thing that's probably going to be interesting is the colour match, which I suspect may not match that well. Good. I mean, these are detailed. These are detailed coaches, and they've got a good feel and weight to them. You know, it feels like a substantial coach. The interior actually looks pretty good as well, with the seating and the tables. And I suppose what will be interesting is when we turn on the lighting, we should be able to get a better look at the interior. So important that it actually does look pretty good when it's lit up. And let's say this is a buffet coach. You can see that section of the coach there. So there's labelling on here, some nice detail. I'll overlay some close photographs as well, so you can get to see it a bit closer. Nice rails here at the end. It's a nice bit of detail. The standard buffers, they're not spring buffers. Clean looking coach, a nice finish on it. This is a pristine finish. So overall it's a good looking coach, a nice level of detail, some additional detail that can be added. I'll want to be checking this next, and again we'll do this with some of the photographs. I want to check the colour match, and we'll see this on the running session, how this matches against I suppose a Hornby equivalent, a Mark II blue and grey coach from the same kind of era. Now, as I mentioned, there is a selection of these. I've taken the buffet car because it's the one that kind of fills a gap in my collection, so that's good. But you can get a whole rake of these, and I'll put the details in the description of the different numbers for the different coach types if you did want to build up an entire rake. These aren't cheap though, so that rake will be an expensive rake for you. So I think it may be, you might like to do what I'm trying to do, is actually match this up with some, I suppose, lower cost coaches to get a more, I suppose, reasonable cost in terms of the overall rake. So yes, this is it. I mean, the only comment I suppose I'll make here now, and I'll kind of cover it again, I think in the summary, is for a high-end coach like this with this type of capability, the one thing I think that might have been good was to actually include passengers as well. But I think for a high-end coach that you're paying this kind of money for, I think you do want to get as many extras as possible, and certainly getting that would be nice. That said, it would be the upper end of the coach stock if you were buying this as a standard coach, non-DCC, and they are available non-DCC as well, and they still set at the kind of high end of the price range. We'll cover that a little bit later on. So they are an expensive coach one way or the other, with or without the DCC. So you really want to be sure you're getting your value, but it is a good looking coach. We'll see how it looks alongside its Hornby brethren in a little while. Okay, so let's go to the next level of this review. I think we need to get this guy out on the layout. I think we need to take a look at it, how it performs. Interested in seeing the lighting, interested in seeing the color match, and then we can do an overall summary and make an assessment as to whether this is something worth going with or something you might be interested in.
Okay, this is a first view on the layout with the first little side lights on there. We'll turn on the main lights now, so you get a first look at these, and I think the first impression is they're quite bright, and they are quite comprehensive. They cover the whole length of the coach, including the vestibule areas. And we'll do a little bit of a homing in there to just see some of the interior detail, and we'll go through this. We have a number of segments here where we'll go through the coaches. We'll do a pan across the coach, both in the kind of daylight conditions as we have here and nighttime conditions, so you can see the difference of what it looks like. This is the tail light, and it's configured for flashing. You have to actually configure the dip switches as well as the DCC, and this is what it looks like in the dark. It is a bit more visible, but it is dim, and when you're actually running the coaches, it isn't actually that visible at all. So this is kind of I think a weakness of the design. Unfortunately, this could be brighter. I think even though it may be prototypical, it doesn't actually work, unfortunately. We'll do a pan here of the coach, so again you get to look at more of the internal detail and see the sort of light, the level of light, and the uniformity of light, which I think is good. It is very good actually, and it's definitely superior to the Hornby coaches, the Hornby coaches that have lights, and you'll see that in a few minutes when we've got one of those Hornby coaches coming up. Another thing to note from this particular one is there's no leakage of light. So if you've ever upgraded a coach with lighting yourself, a coach that was never intended for lighting, you'll have had to go painting black paint all over the place to stop leakage through the plastic, and you can see here there's absolutely no leakage at all. It's perfect. So well done to Bachmann on that front. They've designed a properly lit coach here, and there again you've got the lighting at the vestibule ends of the coach at either end. Again, something you don't get on the Hornby. So this is a Hornby coach, one of their Mark II's. You can see it there, and you can see the kind of uneven lighting towards the end. You can see just the last seating area there with the last window. So there's no lights there, and there's no lights in the vestibule area. So there are two weaknesses with the Hornby coach relative to these Bachmann Mark IIF coaches. There's no leakage on the Hornby coach though, so it is a proper design from that perspective. And overall it wasn't actually bad. I have had these for probably about a year now, and I've been very pleased with them. But when you start to look at the newer coaches, they do kind of pale a little bit, but they're still a good coach, a good quality coach, and I was quite pleased with them for quite a while, and I'm still going to probably stick with a few of them as part of a mixed rake going forward. But there is a little bit of an issue with the colour, and I'll talk about that in a short while in terms of the colour matching. And there you can see the difference. Now that's actually the InterCity version of the buffet car. I actually bought one of these from my InterCity rake as well. Obviously the same configuration, same sort of lighting effect that you've got there. Okay, now we're going to take a break now, and we're going to cut to a running session on the layout. I'll have a full video of this, and I'll put a link in the description. We're just going to go through two circuits, one in kind of daylight conditions, and I'll talk through the different coaches we have here, and again I'll have details of the different coaches in the description. It's a mixed rake of Hornby blue and grey coaches, Mark II's, and the Mark IIF coaches from Bachmann. I've actually stuck an InterCity Mark IIF in there as well. You'll see that in the middle there. They've all got their lights on. They might really know that for the Hornby coaches, because they do look pretty dim in the daylight, whereas the other coaches are very distinctive. It's very obviously fully lit and very, very bright. Those three middle coaches, the last two Hornby coaches, you can see them there. They do have lights, but they are dim. Now you'll see I'll do a circuit with the lights turned off, kind of a nighttime simulation, and again you can see them going through the tunnel there. So we've got a second brake coach there, that's got lighting from Hornby. We've got a first open, the buffet car, and a TSO coach from Bachmann in the middle, and two TSOs at the end from Hornby with lights. So again, to kind of just go around again, give you another view of this. There is a full running session for this run here. Say I'll have a link. It's for the VI Trains locomotive that's pulling this rake. But I deliberately put a mixed rake on it so I could use some of the footage for this particular review. And I have a nighttime session as well. There's a separate shorter video that's got a nighttime footage, and we'll be cutting to that now in a minute, so you'll kind of see what this looks like when we get into the dark. So I do like having lit coaches. I think they add life to your layout and to your trains. So I do like lighting, but it's been pretty poor up to now, the sort of quality of lighting, and you've had to go and do your own custom lighting, and I have done that for a few coaches. But that leakage problem I mentioned, where the light leaks, particularly in the dark, can be a real problem if the coach wasn't designed for lighting. So we've turned the lights out. There's still a level of brightness here. It's kind of more of a dusk than a full night time. But you now see the Hornby coaches are a lot more distinctive. The lighting does kind of come up on them, and it's not that bad. It is uneven, as I kind of indicated earlier, and I suppose it really is a second-class citizen to the lighting quality you're getting off the new Mark 2Fs. They are really bright, they're very uniform, and they cover the entire coach, and then they've also got the flexibility of lighting different areas of the coach depending on what coach type you have. So we're just going to run this around once more, and then we'll bring this guy to a halt, give you another look in the dark, so you get a full look from the different angles and perspectives. And it is they really do stand out, the differences between those two coaches. We'll go around now for one last final run. So I think, I'm very pleased with the Mark 2Fs in terms of the lighting facility they do have. I have had the Hornbys for quite a while, as I said, and I have been pleased with them. And I have been looking to get a few more of them. But now that I've got the Mark 2Fs, it is a kind of it's something I really need to think about now going forward as to what sort of configurations I'm going to have. And the colour matching issue, which I'm going to get to in a few minutes, is probably one of the concerns I suppose I have. Now Hornby are bringing out a range of Mark 2Fs later in the year, and they will be cheaper than the Bachmann equivalents. They won't have lighting, but it will be interesting to see how the colours match on those coaches versus the Bachmann coaches. Ideally, if they are a good match, I may look at investing in them, and may do my own lighting upgrades on them. It's something I might look at. And this is just giving you a slow end to the video, so that you can see again the relative lighting on the two different types of coach. Okay, the next thing we're going to take a look at is the lighting controls for the buffet coaches. So there's a table here that kind of shows the controls taken from the data sheet. We've got F0 to turn the tail lamp on and off, and then you've got F1 to actually enable the flashing. And those settings actually need to correspond to the settings with the switches underneath the coach for them to work. Also, they will work on DC, provided you've got CV29 configured for DC operation. So if you don't have it, they won't work. You'll get no lighting unless you've got that configured from a DCC configuration perspective. The driver compartment and the guards compartment, they're not applicable to this coach type, so you won't actually see those on this particular coach. The passenger seating areas is applicable, so F4 will turn those lights on, as you saw. And then the door interlock lights on side A and side B, which are the two sides of the coach. These are controlled by F5 and F6 respectively. They're only on the blue and grey buffet cars, and these are the only cars in the current series that actually support these door interlock lights. So and they're not actually supported under DC. So if you do configure for DC operation and you turn the power up, these are the two lights that won't come on, but you will get all the other lighting functions working okay. So this is to give you a quick summary of the lighting control. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is the color matching, and I kind of referred to this earlier on during the video, and I suppose this for me was probably one of the most disappointing facts, and it's nothing to do with the Bachmann coaches actually not being in line, because they are highly prototypical in terms of their color. In fact, they're very good. It's the Hornby coaches aren't, and they're off by a number of shades as well. Just the two coaches here shown in the picture, the coach on the left being the Hornby and the one on the right being the Bachmann, the Mark 2F buffet car, and you can see quite a difference there in terms of the actual blue color, and it's such that really it wouldn't work for a mixed rake, and I've got to go and consider my position here in terms of what I'm going to do with this. And as I mentioned, it will be interesting to see what the Mark 2F coaches from Hornby that are the next batch that come out, how they match up to the colour scheme of the Bachmann. Bachmann is, say, highly prototypical. This is a very accurate colour reproduction, and I'm very happy with it, but it just doesn't match with the Hornby coaches I have at the moment. A couple of other points, I suppose, in comparing the two coaches. The riding height is roughly equivalent. They're out by about between 0.5 millimetre and 1 millimetre, but it's not really significant. It wouldn't be an issue. You can probably see the extra space underneath the the bogie there on the car, just above the bogie I should say, between the bogie and the buffet car. There is a little bit, so you can see the riding height is probably a little bit higher there. This is higher than previous Bachmann Mark II coaches, which did ride low actually, and that was a problem with them. This one does appear to have been elevated, so to speak, and it is riding at that height. So I don't think this is an issue in terms of running these together. So I think that's pretty well okay. A couple of other differences, just I suppose to highlight. The actual wheels, you can see the wheels on the right hand side for the Bachmann are actually darkened. They seem to be painted black or dark grey, whereas you've got the metallic finish on the Hornby wheels. So I think that's probably a positive point for the Bachmann. It's good to have the darker wheels. It's probably a little bit more realistic. And in general, you can probably see that the detailing level is a notch above the Hornby. Now, these Hornby Mark II's aren't bad, as I commented previously, and I have a rake of these, and they are a nice coach, and I do like them, and they've served me well. And the lighting in them has been, as good as probably the norm for the last while. However, I have to say that the Bachmann coach really is a standout. The colour is very good. The overall detailing is very, very good, and it is a notch above. So you get what you pay for, and it is a premium coach, and I suppose you are getting a premium finish and a premium level of detail and authenticity with this coach, as well as the very good lighting. Okay, so that's kind of a comparison for the blue and grey. I've also reviewing, as part of this review, I wanted to talk about the InterCity executive livery version of the coach, of the buffet coach. More or less identical from a specification perspective. It doesn't have those lights at the side, as I mentioned earlier, so those are not supported on the InterCity version of the buffet car from the prototype perspective, so they're not on this model. The colour match is a lot better. It's probably out by a shade, but really in normal lighting you don't tend to notice that too much. This is pumped up quite a bit here, so it does actually show, but depending on the angle, depending on the lighting, it is more or less a wash, and in running the coaches I didn't really see a difference when running them on the layout, and may do some videos in the future to show that a little bit more. I do have a video with this coach, the buffet coach, at the end of a rake of the Hornby coaches. I'll put a link in the description for that, so you can actually take a look at that one, and you can see, and I think you should see from that the colour matching doesn't appear to be an issue. The ride height difference is much the same as for the blue and grey coaches. Again, not an issue. I wouldn't find that a problem, so no issue there. The wheel colouring is different, same as for the blue and grey coaches. And again, the overall level of detailing is just that little bit better on this particular coach. Though I have to say the Hornby coach does stand up well here, and the Hornby InterCity Mark II E's, they are a very nice coach. They don't have internal lighting, however, and that's a bit of a drawback, but this is actually a case where I think I will look at running a mixed rake, and look to modify some of these Hornby coaches now with some lighting. I do have some component parts that to spare for that, and I think that's something I'll actually a project when I've got a bit more time, because rather than buying another 3 or 4 of these coaches, which would be expensive, I think I can refactor my Hornby coaches and mix them with the buffet car, which you won't get the buffet car from Hornby anyway, so it does complete out the rake quite nicely, and if I can match the lighting reasonably well, I think I may have a solution here for the InterCity coaches that shouldn't be too expensive. So again, hopefully that gives you some ideas. If you're a fan of the executive livery, the Swallow livery as it's called, then maybe this might be an option for you. Okay, so I think it's time to summarize a lot of information in this review, so apologies for that, but I think it's been important to go through it. So I'm going to give you an overall summary here of the two coaches, the 39-685 and the 39-686, the DCC versions of them. They're in the pristine livery, and obviously in the blue and grey and the InterCity livery. Both of them are really excellent prototypical paintwork and detail, and they do have a detailing kit as well, so you can add some additional detail onto them. And I would say that these are excellent looking coaches, and the closest I've seen certainly the blue and grey to a real life coach. Again, it comes down to paying a premium to get the best, and I think this is the best, and I think you get what you pay for in this regard. The factory installed DCC control lighting, it also works under DC, and as I mentioned, you do need to have the coach configured for that. The non-DCC version, this is interesting, it does have the power pickups in place, and that really is to kind of enable somebody who buys one of these coaches to do their own upgrade and add their own lighting. So that's actually a nice touch from Bachmann. These coaches aren't cheap either. They are relatively expensive. They're on the high side for a non-DCC coach, but at least that's a nice feature to have the power pickup already in place, because that's a messy thing when you're installing lighting on a coach. If you've ever done it, getting the wheels and getting the power pickup sorted out is usually a little bit of a challenge, so great to have that in place, and makes it an awful lot easier to do a lighting upgrade. The lighting coverage on these coaches is excellent. So right through the entire coach there's excellent uniformity. You've got lighting in the vestibules. This really is top grade lighting, and I don't think I can fault it. The only comment I think, and I have it in my summary, is that maybe it is perhaps a little bit too bright, and there's a room for an enhancement there in the future. I'll talk about the product eras for the blue and grey, which is era 6 and 7, and era 8 for the InterCity, and you can't see these mixed in reality. So in an era 8 system you may still have coaches, blue and grey coaches, and that's a configuration I'll certainly be using to use these coaches on my layout. The retail selling price for these typically at the moment, as of June 2019, sitting between the kind of £62 to £80 being the full £79.95 being the full recommended retail price, and you will see people selling it for that. However, if you do shop around, you will see a number of people both on eBay and some common vendors selling it in the 62, 63 sort of price range, and I think that's low enough a price for this to be a serious something to consider seriously if lighting is important to you. So very worthwhile shopping around for these particular coaches. So let's get to the scoring and the final summary. So the running performance, which I didn't mention during the review, is excellent. So I had these coaches running in a number of running sessions now, and running at all speeds across mixed environments of points and diamonds, etc. And the running performance is excellent. So, and I have to say that's the same for the Hornby coaches that I have in the running session here today as well. They performed excellently, which isn't always the case. You can get coaches that do derail under certain conditions. The appearance and detail is top notch. I'm giving it a 5-star. I don't know of a better blue and grey coach, and probably the same for the InterCity livery as well. So top notch to Bachmann. They've really done a very good job there. The lighting is 4.5-star, and that's really on 2 points, which are kind of improvements I think they could make. I think if there was an ability to adjust the brightness, I think this would be a major plus, and particularly if you could do that through DCC. The coaches are bright, and it does mean that at least during your daylight hours you do know that you've got lights in these coaches, which is not necessarily the case for the Hornby coaches, because it's just that bit dim. So that is an improvement. But as I said, the overall quality of the lighting and uniformity is excellent, and for the coaches that provided the ability to turn on the lighting in the guards compartment, or in the case of the driving car, the driver's compartment separately, they're nice features, and I think they're worth having. I think the tail light is a little bit of a weakness. As I said, it may be prototypical, but it isn't very bright, and it doesn't actually appear visible when you're running the coaches. And I think again, the ability to perhaps increase the intensity of that light, which mightn't be 100% realistic, but you'd actually see it when the coaches are running, would be better. So again, maybe there's room for an improvement there. And the general point that I made is the coaches at this sort of price range really should be including passengers. Passengers are expensive add-ons if you want to get good quality ones. So I think if they were included in the price, I think that would be a lot more justifiable to actually put the investment into these coaches. So something for Bachmann to think about there. So a general point here is these are pricey coaches, so it is well worth shopping around for a good price. Finally, I do recommend these coaches. The reason I bought the 2 buffet cars is they were missing from the Hornby lineup. They didn't have buffets for the Mark IIEs that I had, so this was filling a gap. Also, the ability to have the lighting was important to me, so paying a little bit extra for a buffet coach I wasn't it wasn't too much of an issue for me. These were probably, I got these for £62 or £61.95 each. So I thought that was actually a pretty good price. And as I said, given that a buffet car isn't a common element, certainly from the Hornby perspective in their lineups, it was good to get those coaches. And I do like the lighting in them. Probably a little bit bright, but I think I can certainly live with that. It is better than the Hornby lighting, and so I am pleased with that. So are they worth the money? That's the overall question. I think if you pick your coach, and in this case I was looking at the two buffet coaches, I think these are worth the money. I do have a separate review which goes through the entire range of these Mark 2Fs, and I think that some of them perhaps aren't worth the money, certainly with the sort of prices that are out there at the moment. So in that review I will go through all the different variants. I won't go to the same level of detail I've gone to here, but it will give you an idea of the range, and also the elements in that range, the ones in that range I think which are good value and perhaps are worth picking up early on, particularly if you can add them to an existing rake and make use of your existing stock. Okay, so apologies, it's a very long review today, but I hope it was informative and useful. If you're not a subscriber to the channel, please click subscribe and click the notify to get notices of new videos. Thank you for sitting on today's review, and I'd be interested in your comments on these coaches, if you have them, if you're using them, or if you're considering buying them. I think they would be good to share your own opinion on these. And as I say, I do have a review that's going to cover the entire range, because I think that's, now that I've got through and had these for a few weeks, I think it would be useful to share that with people as well. Okay, thanks for watching today, and happy modelling.